Hi, this is Saturday, 15th of Feb 2020, and this is a Product Mentor Talk. My name is Ankur. I work with Spotter Home as a director of product. It's a prop tech company based out of London. So, about the Product Mentor program, I'm a mentor in the Product Mentor program. The Product Mentor program is a global initiative in over 20 countries around the world where mentors and mentees get paired up in the field of product management to help make better product decisions, better product, and most importantly, better product people. You can become a mentor today by going to theproductmentor.com and signing up over there. Please post your questions to the chat on the YouTube and they will be answered in the real time. Today, I'm going to speak about OMTM, one matrix that matters. So let's get started. A little bit about me. I am a director of product with a company called Spotter Home. It's a prop tech company. It is based out of London and is in 7 countries and 11 cities across the Europe. Uh, I have been working in the product, been building products for past 12 years, and advise teams, within the organization and outside on matrices and framework. I've worked around the world with companies like Travelocities and ESPN and Make My Trip in India. So why are we talking about matrices today? The idea is that we want to get to the point wherein we can talk about whether we are focusing on the most relevant KPIs, whether we have one matrices with we have one metric on which we can focus and we can get the whole organization aligned, and are we tracking the matrices properly and accurately so that we can make sure that the organization have proper accountability around it. So what does this OMTM is? OMTM essentially is a matrix which can help you evaluate where your business is going at this point in time. It usually ties in into your most important growth driver, whichever you have, and the metric which you can influence directly. People have this misconception that once they decide an OMTM, they have to kind of live with it for a long period of time. The key of OMTM is that you can change it at any point in time in your organization. Uh, the only point is that you should choose a matrix which you can influence directly. For instance, revenue cannot be your OMTM primarily because there are a lot of external levers which will always define it. And OMTM primarily helps you focus on a specific thing and inspire a culture of experimentation, which is that you can continue to build things around it, measure them, and iterate. So what makes a good OMTM? What makes a good matrix? It needs to be comparative. I should be able to compare a matrix, uh, be it in future or in past, on a week on week, month on month basis, so that I know that whether I'm moving in the right direction or not. It should not be complex so that the team itself is not able to understand. I've seen organizations setting up matrices like ops cost, which is very difficult to calculate at the very first place, but also very difficult for the teams to understand at a developer level especially. It needs to be a ratio, so that you can always calculate it against something else. And more importantly, it needs to be an enabler of behavior change so that you can continue to experiment on top of this. Metrics come in many flavors. What are you trying to measure? What is the so now whether it is qualitative or quantitative? An example of qualitative matrix could be that uh, you're talking to the users, trying to understand what part of your user journey is working or not working, while at the same so now this will actually help you, but it cannot be extrapolated. It will help you get to the whys, but it cannot be extrapolated. In the same vein, there could be a quantitative matrix like NPS, which will tell you similar kind of things, but it will be a continuous progression which you can feed into your products. Vanity versus actionable metrics, pretty much things like page views, downloads are vanity matrices, while anything which is actionable on which you can build experiments are kind of actionable matrices. Uh, and a good example of leading versus lagging matrices is again an NPS, which you can track and run survey against and try to figure out whether if people are having bad experience, you can actually look at your NPS ratings and say, hey, you know what, we need to start fixing things, otherwise people will start churning. While churn rate itself could be a lagging matrix because people have actually churned and now you're trying to figure out why exactly it happened. Uh, Correlation versus causation matrices are again a thing which usually trip people up. But a very good example of correlation matrix is that uh, a conversion rate measured or changing based on the day of the week. So let's say you're a consumer website and or a travel website, and a lot of people buy travel on your website on a Saturday or Sunday. It's actually a function of your customer, not exactly a function of your website. While a causal could be the conversion rate depending on your bounce rate or your page load time. People would drop off, the conversion would drop if the page will take half a minute to load. So that's a causal matrix for you. A lot of time the question comes in that would one matrix be enough? There could be dozens or hundreds of matrix which you can track today using Google Analytics or Amplitude. The idea of OMTM is to build focus around the organization and to say, hey, you know what, if every single day in the morning I wake up and I get to see only one matrix, what one matrix will help me understand whether the business is growing or not? That's the idea of OMTM. Depending on how big your organization is, you can define secondary KPIs, secondary matrices. I always recommend to stick to less than three. So now a very good example is conversion rate versus average order value. Conversion rate could be a primary matrix or an OMTM here, while the secondary matrices could be average order value. But a lot of it is dependent on what kind of business is this, where exactly are you in the market, and also trying to understand what is happening to the business at what point at that point in time. If you are actually focusing on LTV, then or on the revenue, then average order value is your should be your OMTM. Versus if you are trying to figure out how can how can you improve the step of the funnel, then conversion rate could be your OMTM. So I've got a question. I'll take that. So the question is, how might you make use of proxy metrics, lower level metrics than some cited, to make sure a specific project is contributing towards moving the top line metrics? And it's a great question. One of the ways in which I have tried doing this is by linking it to the OKRs, wherein I've said, hey, you know what, can we define specific KRs to these lower level metrics, and in those cases, specific teams become responsible for those lower level matrices. It becomes their OMTM in these cases. An organization can have a higher level goal or an objective, but at the same time, these lower level metrics could be an OMTM to a specific project team. If you're a large organization, if you're a small organization, it could be dependent on where the organization sit at that point in time. Okay, let's go to so now These are few of the matrices which I would usually recommend if you have to get to the secondary level matrices, based on what kind of business you have, or based on what do you want to track. So for instance, if you want to track virality in in a SaaS business, customer acquisition cost uh, is a great OMTM, primarily because it helps you understand how can you continue to reduce your customer acquisition cost while pegging on to virality. There could be secondary matrices like CLV or upselling, but this largely helps you understand in a two matrices framework, based on which organization you are, based on the domain of your organization versus what you want to track at that point in time. Okay, a little bit of segue, stuff which I was talking to while taking the question. We all define our OKRs, but how do you marry OKRs and OMTM? Uh, at the end of the day, OKR is the key. Just because you have an OMTM doesn't necessarily mean that you shouldn't define your OKRs. You should definitely define your OKRs. You should have your objectives, and you should marry your key results with the OMTMs you have. It makes sure that your key results are something which you can control and are objective, are kind of moving towards a goal. It also helps you to contextualize your experiments. It helps, you can look at every week, you can look at your key results every week and say, what, these experiments are not working based on our OMTM, so let's try something else, try something new, try something different. Or should we, or is this a right time to do this key result? uh, Maybe our organization is at a different place, we should deprioritize this key results versus pick up something else. uh, I strongly recommend marrying OMTM to the key results. Now, I'll talk about a specific matrix, as a function of OMTM. This is one of the matrix which I love because it is something which you can control, and you can actually build iterate measure on it. You can create a culture of scientific measurement around it. Conversion rate is one of those metrics. I'll specifically talk about how can you optimize it. Conversion rate optimization is a process of using analytics and you know uh, qualitative analysis to make sure that you can continue to improve. Now, conversion rate comes in various different form. It has different flavors. There's a macro conversion which tracks what happens at a at a global level on the website. Again, could be a vanity matrix like app download, or it could be a specific purchase. The funnel gets completed, but then it could be micro conversions. So, for instance, if I'm a Facebook product manager, for videos, obviously my video views is a macro conversion, but at a organization level, video views is just just a micro conversion. Now, just a caveat before we go ahead into this: the conversion optimization will not fix a bad offer, or fix a bad product. If you do not have a demand, maybe that's where you should go back and figure out why is there no demand. If you do not have the right selection in the funnel, that's where you should start working with your supply team, your category team. Again, pricing is another thing wherein you should do a competitive analysis and understand, uh, in the neighborhoods or in the markets where you are, do you have the right pricing or not? These, if you do not have these things already fixed in the product, none of the conversion optimization technique which I'm going to talk about uh, from here onwards would actually work. So, there are multiple ways to improve conversion rates. There have been multiple, surveys in which organizations try to do it either via copy or via competitor benchmarking. But eventually, today I'm going to only talk about stuff which has come back again and again into everybody's radar, which is A/B testing. A/B testing is kind of the new normal. Everybody does A/B testing, but uh, whether are you doing A/B testing the right way or not is what I'm going to focus on. So what are the brutal facts around A/B testing? Number one is that more often than not, uh, companies are doing A/B testing at a low traffic websites, which doesn't even make sense unless and until you have 1,000 order per month, or unless you have enough traffic to run an A/B test for an optimal amount of time. Your test would either run for too long a period of time and you won't get the reliable outcome, or will have to run for too short a time, and you would obviously not get anything out of it. Second thing is people copy competitors, and every time I talk to companies, they say, "Hey, you know what? If Instagram can copy Snapchat, why can't we?" The key is that Instagram could do it because they could they have the power of changing the behaviors, while most of our organizations would not have. Secondly, Instagram just didn't copy the product and slapped it as is. They used the core idea of stories, but eventually they made the idea their own. So yes, you can copy the product. You can copy the product from your competitors, but do it in a way that your customers can relate to it, your UX can relate to it, and you know and you should know why you're doing it at the very first place, not just because, hey, you know what a competitor is doing and he's having a great success at it. You should record your device experiences, something which Google Analytics allows you to do that. Pretty much every analytics tool allows you to do that, but I've seen Google Analytics does it the best. It helps you segment the results, uh, by the size of designs which your users are using, and then you can actually leverage it to understand where you should focus, and who you should build products for. Uh, Now, this is my favorite slide because it kind of covers a lot of things which we do on a daily basis, and kind of takes the A/B testings in the wrong direction. One is that we end up doing a lot of A/B testing at the wrong place. We need to do it at the right conversion point where the drop is happening. If we are looking, for instance, if Booking.com has to do A/B testing uh, on its homepage widget, it would not actually look for it's the output will not be the conversion, but essentially how many people it is able to lead using that change from the home page to the search page. More often than not, people do these minor A/B tests from one step funnel A/B test, but end up comparing the result at the bottom of the funnel. So it's very important that you do it at the key conversion point, and you make sure that you are using the right channel attribution, you are using the right medium source, right landing page, right keyword. What are the steps of and the process? Like I said, are you using the checkout? And if you are using the checkout in the funnel, uh, what exactly are you testing it for? Are you using the A/B test to define and optimize the checkout funnel, or the login button which comes right above that? And people often ignore it, and you kind of block them whenever they try to buy something before the checkout. Layers of engagement. People end up doing a lot of A/B test around search, uh, which is a great place to do, but then you need to have enough traffic for that. And you shouldn't A/B test your developers. A/B test, one of the great framework which I've learned over the period of time is that A/B tests work the best when you're trying to disprove your hypothesis. More often than not, we end up doing this to kind of assuage our ego, to say, hey, you know what, because my developer is saying this, either it must be right or must be wrong. The idea is to make sure that we are if we have a hypothesis, we should be able to disprove it. If we are not able to disprove it, then it's a good then the success of A/B test is actually a good one. um, I've seen A/B tests. It's funny, but I've seen A/B tests being run without an analytics. It is very important that whenever you do an A/B test, you need to have it integrated directly with your core analytics tool like Google Analytics or Amplitude. You don't test long enough. You think 2 weeks, sometimes 1 week is long enough, but you don't have traffic. For that, I would suggest, like I said in number one, please use uh, the A/B test calculator to figure out how long you need to run the test to get to a significant result. You keep testing the same thing despite the failed test, because again, you are trying to prove your hypothesis, trying to live to your confirmation biases, instead of worrying about the fact that, hey, you know what, maybe the hypothesis itself is wrong, maybe the product itself is wrong, maybe the search price and selection itself is wrong. In the testing cycle, I've seen people doing A/B test like once a month. The idea is that you should do A/B testing as much and as soon as frequently as possible, so that you can bubble out your inefficiency and you can kill them. I've gotten a question. I'll take that and I'll continue after that. So the question is, I see parallels between OMTM and R. Pirate model, acquisition, activation, revenue, retention, referral, used by top SaaS growth companies. Would you say they are the same, related, different? Okay, I think this is a great question. So at the end of the day, OMTM could actually work in any kind of company. Like I said in the beginning, OMTM is primarily to make sure that the organization is focused around a matrix which they can look up at, when anybody in the organization wakes up, and when they look up the trend of that matrix, they are able to figure out uh, where the organization is doing good or not. Second thing is, OMTMs need to be something which you can control. Whether acquisition, activation are OMTMs, they are kind of frameworks, but eventually they would have their own OMTMs. So yes, they are related, but then eventually we'll have to deep dive and say, hey, you know what? Every acquisition need to have its own OMTM. Every activation needs to have its own OMTM, and depending on where the organization is, if, for instance, I'm a startup who hasn't really figured out its core value proposition, I would continue to keep doing my OMTM would be, keep experimenting on the landing page until unless I actually figure out what value proposition sticks with users. But if I'm Google, I would really figure out what is the fastest, frictionless way to get people to sign up. Again, the OMTMs would be very different in both the organization. And OMTMs can be used not just by SaaS company, but also by the consumer growth. Okay, I will move forward. Again, I've seen a lot of early stage startup doing A/B testing because A/B testing is the new normal. But then remember, if you have no traffic, I would suggest go speak to your users, get out of the office. That's the fastest way to figure out whether you're doing something right or wrong. A/B tests do not scale in that case. um, you forget mobile and tablet, and you forget that you have various different browsers and various different devices which your customer use, and you end up testing the primary browser and primary device which you have. I come from India, and in India you primarily have to have pretty much a device farm to test anything, which I'll cover very soon, because uh, Android has the dominant market share, and they are at least, in top 10, the 8 of them are Android, and all 8 have different screen sizes. So now let's talk a little bit about, how can we triangulate the qualitative and quantitative analysis to improve our conversion rate. One is that uh, we make if we are able to make a device list and trying to figure out what are our top 10 devices we get our traffic to and what is their conversion rate, we can actually get them to our testing checklist and using our analytics data. More often than not, we do not end up uh, we end up testing using only our primary device, while our users are using something else altogether. Now, you clearly cannot buy uh, a lot of phones if you are early stage startup. So what do you do? If you cannot buy them, there are a lot of other options in the market. Amazon provides you a device farm which can allow you to test into multiple different screen size, different devices, different form factors, and different technologies. We used to use it to test very extensively for React Native when React Native has just become, uh, mainstream. And for desktop testing, cross-browser testing is one of the tool which I have used very extensively. Do rapid usability testing to figure out, are users using my app the way I would want them to? At a prototype level, you can use something like Usability Hub. If you have the live tool and you do not have money to acquire user, you can use something like usertesting.com or userzoom.com. They're pretty great tools, have gotten different kind of uh, guys, different kind of users who you can recruit from different kind of personas. So it is a pretty well established organizations who can do this work for you at a much cheaper price. Visual analytics is something which I have found very helpful, primarily from the perspective of heat maps, running polls, and more importantly, trying to understand what, especially when you launch something new, trying to understand how users are interacting with it. Hotjar is my favorite, but then there are other tools like Appsy, which no longer is accepting the new clients, but it's a great tool for apps, especially. Uh, more and more organizations are going now for UX Scam or Decibel Insight, now that Appsy is not taking any new clients. uh, you should run a customer survey as often than not. I keep on hearing this again and again from people that, hey, you know what, we do not get enough click through. The key is not to get enough click through. The key is to get at least 99 to 100 people to act upon it. More than 96 user responses are scientifically enough to act upon. It's been proven by Daniel Kahneman, so perfectly fine for us to use this as a number. Again, voice of customer tool. There are a lot of tools which can help you. You can just plug them just by using a JavaScript can understand, how are you. If users have a feedback, they can give it to you right away. Form analytics is another thing. This is something which I've started using recently. You can do them using a Google Tag Manager also, but there are specific tools like Heap Analytics to do form analytics, which helps you understand where in the form, if you have like 5 field in the form, where in the form exactly is the drop happening. And then you can start educating users that, hey, you know what, I'm taking, for instance, in this case, I'm taking the phone number because so that we can call you if there is a problem delivering your order. uh, Performance, right? So more often than not, we underestimate how much time, how much page load time is. One of the things which I make sure is mandatory, at least in my office, is that people do not just keep testing everything onto Wi-Fi. The best way to test the product is largely on 3G. So as to figure out if it is working on 3G, it would definitely work on 4G and Wi-Fi. It will also make sure that we set the right standard for our users. Let me talk a little bit about how we can use psychology to improve our conversion rate. So again, as a part of psychology, there are two kinds of. This is a concept which again was popularized by Daniel Kahneman. He was the first non-economist to win the Nobel Prize in economics for kind of literally inventing behavioral economics. And his concept is simple: system one versus system two. System one is an impulse brain, it is always on, and this is what people target, organization target when they show you persuasions. While system two is something which kind of thinks slowly. It allows you to think for future, and it is creative. Uh, if you are a consumer product company, you should always optimize for system one. You should always optimize for emotions. So I have this screenshot from booking.com where there are two screens which I have put in, but on two screens they are actually targeting users by at least four different kind of persuasion, and all these four persuasions are actually optimized for system one. They are telling, hey, you know what, they're giving social proof to the users. They're making sure that more people are booking, this is the last room, there are only six room, so on and so forth. uh, Everything is kind of orients towards the fact that you should push people to the next step of the funnel. When should you optimize for the system two? uh, System two is biggest problem is that you know it kind of steps back and thinks about it. As an internet company, it is of a great value if you are trying to sell, for instance, a Tesla, right? Or a house. You can actually give more and more information. You can help user understand. Then you can help user understand, and you can help him look at the fact that, hey, you know what, it is perfectly fine for you to make decision for either value of a bargain. And we are ready to give you more information at every step of the funnel. That is when you should engage with the system too. I've gotten a new question. I'll take that question, and then we will. Yeah, I've gotten actually two questions. Let me first take these two questions, and then I'll get to this. Okay. Hannah is asking, can you speak to using OMTM in an enterprise and or on-premise context where you do not have access to user behavior information or other data? Uh, Great question. I think, you know, again, it depends a lot on what stage your organization is, even if it is an enterprise company. But let's just take a step back and say, okay, I do not have a user behavior information, but what do I have? One of the biggest power of being an enterprise company is that I have sales teams, right? um, who have gotten this wealth of information, which nobody else has gotten usually in consumer organization. So my OMTM could be, hypothetically, my OMTM in this thing could be that how can I actually make sales team productive to sell more. And from there I can say, okay, I can say, hey, you know what, today the sales team bring in 50 50 uh, SKUs per day. uh, my OMTM will be, I'll help them get to 70 SKUs per day. Okay, something which I can totally control by building tools for them. The other way to look at could be, if I want to build tools for the customer of this sales team, and that is when I would start using the data which I can collect from the sales team itself, and then I can actually validate, um, just at a prototype level, using usertesting.com, things like usertesting.com, so that I can actually cross validate whatever sales team is telling with whatever our users are thinking at that point in time. I've got another question. You have mentioned testing performance on 3G. What matrices do you suggest to pay attention to? Page load time, AJAX response, infrastructure utilization, any framework to use here. Uh, Great question. So from the product perspective, what I look at is bounce rate and what are my page load time. From the technology perspective, our technology team primarily look at multiple things, but one of their core tool is the Google Page Speed uh, tool, which helps them understand how is their website behaving, or how is the page behaving every time they add something. So, for instance, I will give you a very good example. When we added Hotjar, Hotjar actually makes open port, uh, open port JavaScript call every time you have to do that. Uh, we could not figure it out when we actually implemented Hotjar. We could only implement it out when we actually started testing using Google Page Speed. So we eventually replaced Hotjar with Mouseflow, which pretty much does the same thing, but doesn't really make an open port JavaScript call every time it gets called. My framework is pretty simple. I look at bounce rate every time something new goes, something new goes live, and the page load time. Uh, for the technology team, it is always the Google Page Speed tool, which they actually refer to after things goes live and continue to optimize on top of it. Okay, I've got another question, which is what OMTMs do you recommend for hardware products? Very subjective to where the organization is at that point in time. If it is an organization which I'm starting, right, and I already have competitors who do the same thing. For instance, if I want to compete with Apple Watch, my OMTM would be uh, have a cheaper product which does the same thing which Apple Watch does, right? And try to target those customers. But if I'm already a product which is there in the market, like Nest, or which has already been there, for them the OMTM could be, how do I bring my customer acquisition cost down? How do I make sure that my customers are using my product pretty much every single day? Actually, Echo is a very good example. Amazon Echo, Alexa is a very good example, where their OMTM would surely be that, how do I actually uh, uh, keep bringing new partners onto the platform? That could be one OMTM, or the other OMTM could be, I should be able to keep bringing the hardware cost down so that my customer acquisition cost goes down. Yeah, so very subjective to where the organization is at that point in time. Yeah. Okay. So I was talking about system two, which is largely, you know, which is largely used when you are selling a product which is expensive, which needs a lot of information before taking a decision. Houses are those, expensive cars are one of those, expensive watches are one of those. I would not buy an Apple phone using the system one. I would buy an Apple phone using system two, because it, and that's why you would never see Apple using persuasions like, hey, only two phones left. Okay, last slide of the day. When you eventually, the goal should be that you should not make people think, you should not be ambiguous, and more importantly, you should not have system one and system two clash. Uh, a lot of times people show persuasion, but at the same time they try to also give a lot of information via those persuasion. That is a deal killer, because people would your brain will get confused. Your brain would start seeking more information. Your system two will get activated and start clashing with system one. The idea is that you should never have both of them kind of fighting with each other. you would see booking.com would show reviews, but it would never show reviews in a way that you can read it properly. So it would give you only enough information so that you can actually get inside the funnel as much as possible. um, so yeah, system one is always on. You should stay in it as much as possible, but again, if you're selling a house, you clearly cannot leverage system one. You will have to keep on giving more information as possible. But if you want to sell a subscription on the house, or to the landlords, or to the real estate developer, then you can use system one, for instance. So yeah, but be careful, do not have both of them clash. That's it for now. Thank you so much for joining in. So, like I said, become a mentor today at productmentor.com, and follow us on Instagram at Product People. If you're looking to fill a product job with a great product person, visit the productjobs.com. It is totally free for us, for anybody to post jobs and to get a great product person. And don't forget to like and subscribe this video. Thank you so much for such a great audience. It was a pleasure presenting it to you.